Welcome to Snoozy Tour, where stories don't just put you to sleep, they take you somewhere you've never been. Tonight, we return to the banks of the Volga, to a city that refused to die, a place where the snow fell for months, and even silence had a heartbeat. This isn't a story about victory. It's a story about what survives after, about hands rebuilding from rubble, and voices learning to sing again. Close your eyes. Hear the whisper of the wind across the frozen river. Feel the warmth of a harmonica echoing through the ruins. Every breath, every sound, every memory is part of this journey. Because tonight, we're not just remembering a battle. We're remembering the people who carried light through the longest winter in history. So take a slow breath, dim your screen, and drift with me into The River at Dusk. A Snoozy Tour story of survival, memory, and the quiet return of peace. The paper trembles in your hands. Not because of the cold, though the wind outside your barracks window could cut glass, but because the words on the page feel heavier than the ink they're written in. Mobilization Order Number 42. Report to rail station. Immediate transfer to the southern front. Destination, Stalingrad. You trace the letters once, twice, as if touching them might change what they mean. Behind you, the stove crackles weakly, filling the room with smoke that smells like damp straw and resignation. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else laughs too loudly, pretending it's a joke. You fold the paper and slip it into your pocket. It feels like a stone you'll carry forever. Outside, the snow swirls in dull gray spirals. The whole village seems to hold its breath. At the station, the platform is a blur of khaki and steam. Mothers push through the crowd with jars of pickles, bread wrapped in towels, amulets sewn from old ribbons. Fathers stand apart, stiff-shouldered, faces carved from silence. You find your spot near the end of the line, carriage number 17, painted in flaking green. Someone shouts your name. You turn. Your brother's there, Andre. The mechanic, the one with the smile that used to light whole rooms. He hands you a small object wrapped in cloth. Inside is a harmonica, dented and scratched. I fixed it, he says. It only plays one note right, but maybe that's all you'll need. You want to say something back, a joke, a thank you, a promise, but the whistle blows, and suddenly the air fills with the sound of iron and farewell. The train shudders forward, windows fog, faces blur, and the world begins to move without waiting for you. You press your forehead to the glass. Your village shrinks until it's just smoke and snow. You think of the letter again, the one that started all this. The paper might burn easily, but the command it carries will not. The soldiers in your compartment start talking, their voices thick with bravado and fear. One of them, a boy with freckles and a cap too big for his head, leans toward you. Do you think it's true, he whispers, that the city's already gone? You shrug. If it were gone, they wouldn't still be sending us. He nods like he wants to believe you. The train lurches over a bridge. The sound below is a river frozen half solid, moaning under the wheels. The boy presses his hand against the window, tracing the frost. It looks cold down there, he says. You smile faintly. It will be colder where we're going. He doesn't answer after that. Neither do you. The carriage rocks like a cradle, and for a moment, in that rhythmic clatter, you almost forget where it's taking you. Almost. Then someone starts singing, a folk tune from before the war. The melody floats thin and unsteady through the smoke. You close your eyes, letting it settle in your chest like an ember you're afraid to touch. And you wonder, have you ever held a piece of paper that changed everything? Would you have stepped onto that train knowing what waited at the end? Or would you have turned away, told yourself the war would pass you by? The train roars through the night, and you realize the answer doesn't matter anymore, because you're already moving, and the world behind you is no longer yours to stay in. You reach into your pocket and feel the harmonica. You press it to your lips. One note, rough, imperfect, alive. It echoes through the carriage, cutting through the rattle of the wheels. For a brief second, everyone listens, even the soldiers who pretend not to care. Outside, the snow keeps falling, erasing tracks, burying fences, softening everything except the truth. You're on your way to Stalingrad, and there's no turning back. The train never really stops. It only hesitates, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Every halt feels the same, steam, shouting, boots thudding against frozen dirt. You've lost track of how many stations you've passed. Snow drifts through the cracks in the carriage walls. It settles on your pack, your lap, your hands, You don't bother brushing it away anymore. It melts slower than time. Someone opens a tin of herring. The smell fills the air, sharp and metallic. Another soldier jokes that you're halfway to heaven already, if heaven smells like fish and coal smoke. No one laughs. Through the window, the landscape slides by in shades of gray. Forests stripped bare. Villages without roofs. Each one looks like it's holding a breath it can't release. The boy with freckles sits opposite you again. He's carving something into a bit of wood, the shape of a bird, maybe. You watch his knife move carefully as if precision could protect him. Think they'll feed us better in the city? He asks. You smirk. If there's anything left to eat. He looks down, keeps carving. A soldier near the door hums under his breath. It's that same old song again. Soft, circular. Like a lullaby someone forgot the words to. You reach for the harmonica. Blow one note. It's still broken, but it fills the carriage anyway. A few heads turn. Someone sighs. The rhythm of the wheels joins in click, clack, like the world itself is keeping time. Outside, the wind rises. It moans through the gaps in the wood. A voice so human that for a moment you imagine it's calling names. Andre's name, maybe. Or yours. You press your forehead to the glass. Frost blossoms beneath your breath. Beyond it, endless snow. White that isn't pure, white that hides things. Have you ever watched a world roll by and felt like you were leaving yourself behind with every mile? What would you hold on to if you knew the journey only leads deeper into fire? The train jerks violently. A shout from the front car. Someone curses, someone prays. Then silence. Through the window you see a blur of wreckage. Another train, derailed, half buried in snow. Bodies frozen in place, faces covered in frost. The conductor doesn't slow down. None of you speak. The boy across from you finally whispers, "Were they ours?" You nod once. Everyone's someone's. The words hang there, heavy and fragile. Outside, the world continues to unravel. Frozen rivers like glass veins. Telegraph poles leaning at impossible angles. A horizon that never moves closer no matter how long you stare. You wonder what's waiting in Stalingrad. A city? A grave? A test? You've heard stories that it's a furnace that eats armies, that even the snow there burns. You try not to believe them. But when night falls again, you dream of fire. Not the kind that warms, the kind that remembers. You wake with a start. The train is slowing. Lights flicker ahead. Yellow, dull, barely alive. A station. The end of the line. Someone calls out, "Volga sector." You gather your pack, your rifle, your courage, such as it is. The harmonica slips from your pocket. You catch it just before it hits the floor. As you step down, the wind greets you like an old enemy. It tastes of iron and smoke. You breathe it in anyway. The officer at the platform waves his arm. Keep moving. The city's waiting. You glance at the sky. A low ceiling of ash, shifting, restless. Somewhere beyond it, dawn is trying to happen. Can you imagine walking toward a sunrise that never quite arrives? Would you still keep going if the light refused to meet you halfway? You shoulder your pack and join the column. Boots crunching on frozen earth. The harmonica rattles softly in your pocket. A heartbeat, or maybe a memory trying to remind you that you're still alive. Ahead lies Stalingrad, the place where maps end and stories begin. And though you don't know it yet, this train has carried you not to war, but to the longest night of your life. When the train finally stops for good, the silence feels louder than the engine ever did. You step down into snow that isn't soft. It crunches like shattered glass. The air smells of smoke, cordite, and fear that's been here too long. A man in a long coat stands on a crate, shouting orders through a megaphone. His breath turns to clouds between the syllables. Welcome to the front. You are the wall now. The last wall. You look around. There is no wall. Just broken fences, torn banners, and faces that look as hollow as the shells that made them. Someone laughs, a dry, choking sound that isn't quite human. Someone else mutters a prayer. You grip the strap of your rifle, though it isn't even loaded yet. What does it mean to be a wall when everything around you is already falling? Would you still stand knowing what's coming? They march you east toward the edge of the city. The road is lined with what used to be houses. Brick teeth in a mouth too tired to close. Somewhere ahead, artillery whispers its slow thunder. The ground shakes, then goes still again. You pass a sign riddled with holes. It says, "Welcome to Stalingrad," though half the letters are missing. Snow clings to the gaps like bandages. A young lieutenant walks beside you. His gloves are too thin, his voice too calm. He says, "Don't worry, comrade. We'll hold the line." You glance at his face. He looks 15. You arrive at a row of trenches that look more like open graves. Someone hands you a shovel. You dig until the metal bites stone, then frozen earth, then something softer. You don't ask what. You just keep digging. When night falls, flares bloom over the skyline. They hang there like ghostly suns, turning every ruin into a stage. Each shadow moves wrong, too quick, too long, too alive. You take your position behind a half-collapsed wall. It's made of red brick and luck. You can see the river from here, wide, dark, patient. Men whisper that it's the only thing still moving freely. You look down the sight of your rifle. The barrel trembles. You force it still. Somewhere across the street, you hear a child crying. You tell yourself it's your imagination. Could you point a rifle at a sound that small? Would you close your eyes or aim straighter? Oleg, the older soldier with the cracked teeth, lights a cigarette beside you. The glow paints his face in brief, violent orange. You get used to it, he says. You don't ask what it is. He flicks the match into the snow. Remember, he adds quietly, we are the wall. If we fall, everything behind us falls too. You stare at the river again, the faint outlines of the opposite bank. Somewhere beyond that is home. And yet, it already feels farther away than the moon. The night grows colder. The city groans, beams shifting, distant tanks crawling. You rest your cheek against the brick, feel its roughness bite your skin. Feels almost comforting. Real, solid. You whisper to yourself, if I'm the wall, then let me stand. No one hears you, but the wind carries the words anyway. Across ruins, across the frozen water, where they'll stay long after the shouting ends. Have you ever stood in a place that demanded everything from you, even the parts you hadn't discovered yet? Would you stand or step back? Tell me in the comments, because every wall is made of choices, not bricks. The order comes at dusk. No bugles, no speeches. Just a man with frost in his beard saying, ferry leaves in 10 minutes. Keep your head low. You shoulder your pack. The harmonica rattles inside, a tiny heartbeat reminding you that you're still human. Outside, the world has gone gray-blue, that color between day and night when even courage freezes. The river lies ahead, wide and dark as a wound. Ice cracks float like broken mirrors. Somewhere across it, the city burns. Columns of smoke rising like pillars of a ruined temple. The ferrymen move fast. Their hands are red and raw, rope burned. They don't speak. They just point to the boats, wooden skeletons patched with metal and prayer. You step in. The planks creak. The current tugs like a restless animal beneath you. Someone whispers, they say the Germans shoot anything that moves on the water. Someone else laughs softly, not because it's funny, but because laughter's all that's left. The boat pushes off. Oars dip into blackness. The sound is slow, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Behind you, the far bank fades. Ahead, the sky flashes white. Artillery close enough to feel in your ribs. You duck instinctively. A shell lands upstream. Water explodes upward, freezing midair before it falls again. One man screams. Another prays. You keep rowing. Would you keep rowing if every breath might be your last? Could you cross a river when even the river wants you gone? The current shifts. The boat spins. You grip the edge until your fingers ache. A body floats past, face down, wrapped in a coat with no insignia. You tell yourself he's already beyond fear. The ferryman grunts. Almost there. You can't see the shore, just firelight flickering between shapes that might be buildings. The smell hits you before the sight. Smoke, oil, blood, and something sweeter you can't name. You reach the shallows. Boots hit mud. Someone stumbles, drops a rifle. Someone else drags him up again. No one stops moving. A sergeant shouts above the wind, "Welcome to Stalingrad." You expect sarcasm. You don't get it. His face is too tired for jokes. You look around. Ruins that used to be streets. Chimneys like gravestones. Windows flickering with sniper fire instead of candles. You realize you're not entering a city. You're entering a memory that refuses to die. The lieutenant gestures to a half-collapsed building. Regimental HQ's there. Report, then find shelter if you can. You nod and start walking. Every step crunches through ash and bone. You try not to look at the shapes half buried in snow. At a crossroads, a sign leans sideways. You can still read part of it, Lenin Avenue. The irony burns worse than the cold. Oleg finds you there. He's alive somehow. Covered in soot, smiling faintly. Made it across, he says. Not everyone did. You nod. Neither of you asks who didn't. You sit for a while, backs to a ruined wall. He pulls out a canteen, takes a sip, passes it over. You drink even though it tastes like metal and smoke. Above, tracer rounds carve orange lines into the night. They look almost beautiful if you forget what they mean. Can beauty and death share the same sky? Would you look up or keep your head down? A soldier runs past, shouting something about snipers. You and Oleg duck automatically, pressing your shoulders to the cold brick. You wait. Nothing happens. Then, faintly from somewhere in the dark, a sound, a melody, a harmonica maybe, broken off-key, but real. You reach into your coat and feel your own. You don't play. Not yet. Just hold it to remember why you came. The city breathes around you, slow, wounded, alive. The Volga behind you freezes a little more each night. But you know this, once you've crossed it, there's no going back. You exhale, watch your breath vanish. You whisper, so this is where the world ends. Oleg grins. Or begins. Interactive close. If you had crossed that river, through bullets, cold, and darkness, what would you think the moment your boots touched the other side? Relief? Terror? Or nothing at all? Write it below. Because sometimes survival itself asks for an answer. They call it a house, but that's generous. It's a skeleton of walls and door frames, a half-burned apartment block crouching at the edge of the square. Still, the men guarding it speak of it with reverence. Pavlov's house, they say, a fortress made of brick, blood, and stubbornness. You're assigned there at dawn. The sergeant gives you directions that sound like a riddle. Past the bakery that isn't, left at the tram that burned, under the balcony that hums. The city's map has long stopped matching the ground. You navigate by ruin, by memory, by smell. When you arrive, a sentry lifts his rifle. You raise your hands. He lowers his. His face is wrapped in rags, only the eyes visible, red-rimmed, sleepless. Your reinforcement? He asks. Something like that. He nods toward the door. Then reinforce. Inside, the air tastes like dust and gunpowder. Men crouch by broken windows, rifles resting on sandbags made from flour sacks. Someone has drawn a face on the wall, a woman's face smiling faintly. Someone else has added a halo of bullet holes around her head. Oleg finds you again. Somehow he's always there. Welcome to paradise, he says. Keep your head low. Snipers love newcomers. You laugh once. It's more exhale than sound. You take your place by the window. Outside, the square is empty except for a single tram frozen mid-turn. Its windows shattered, its passengers long gone. A stray dog moves between the wreckage, ribs showing through fur. A shot cracks. The dog drops. No one reacts. You reload quietly. The act itself feels ritualistic, mechanical, almost sacred. Would you have looked away from the window after that shot? Or would you have stared, needing to prove to yourself that feeling nothing was still a choice? The day stretches long. Sunlight, if you can call it that, filters through the smoke like pale thread. You eat what passes for lunch. A slice of bread hard enough to scrape your gums. A sip of water that tastes faintly of iron. Someone down the hall hums a tune you almost recognize. The same rhythm your brother used to whistle while fixing his tools. It makes you ache in a way bullets never could. In the afternoon, the shelling begins again. You feel it before you hear it, the low, rising vibration that crawls through brick and bone. Then the blast. Plaster rains down. Dust fills your mouth. Your ears ring so hard the world turns silent for a heartbeat. Oleg shouts something. You can't hear him. You only see his lips move. Reload. You do. You fire at flashes across the street. You don't know if you hit anything, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're still standing. When the shelling finally stops, the world exhales a cloud of silence. Someone coughs. Someone laughs. A hollow, victorious sound. The laughter dies quick. A new soldier, barely older than a boy, kneels by the wall. He's shaking, staring at the empty space where the window used to be. He whispers, "Why this house? Out of all of them?" Oleg answers softly, "Because it's still standing." That's all. That's enough. Night falls. The city glows faintly red, not from lanterns but from the fires that never quite die. You sit beside the broken mural woman on the wall. Someone's drawn a ribbon in her hair now. You wonder who she was before she became everyone's saint. You take out your harmonica. It plays the same wrong note, but it sounds right tonight. The others listen quietly. Not for music, for proof that something still breathes inside these walls. Can you imagine being inside a ruin that felt more alive than the world outside it? Would you have played that tune even if your hands shook too much to finish it? You close your eyes for a moment. The harmonica rests warm against your palms. Outside, the wind hums through the shattered tram wires, a song of its own. You realize this house is no longer a building. It's a promise, a place that refuses to vanish. And maybe that's enough reason to stay another day. Interactive close. If you were in Pavlov's house, surrounded by fire, silence, and strangers who refuse to fall, what would you hold on to first? Your rifle, your music, or your faith? Comment your answer, because survival, in the end, is made of choices like these. By morning, the snow has stopped. The world looks quiet again. The kind of quiet that only exists between shots. From your window in Pavlov's house, you can see smoke curling from the chimneys across the street. Except there are no fires, no people, just traps, bait for the unwary. Oleg leans against the wall beside you. He points with his cigarette. See that stovepipe? Don't stare too long. That's where they got Misha. You look away. The lesson burns itself into memory. In this city, sight itself can kill you. You trade shifts, 4 hours watching for trying to sleep. There is no real night, no real day. Only the rhythm of gunfire and the whistle of distant shells. They say the Germans have brought their best snipers here. Men who can hit a man's shadow. Your commander whispers another name, Zaitsev. Some say he's a myth. Others swear they saw him shoot an officer through a slit the size of a coin. Either way, you start moving differently. Slower, lower. You even breathe differently. Every window becomes an argument. Every street a trapdoor. How long could you stay still, knowing a single blink might be the last thing you ever do? Would you watch the enemy through a scope, or through your heart? The boy who carved the wooden bird on the train is here too. You hadn't seen him since the crossing. Now he sits 2 windows down, rifle trembling slightly in his hands. You watch him exhale, once, twice, then squeeze the trigger. A puff of snow bursts from a rooftop opposite. He lowers his rifle, eyes wide. Did I get him? No one answers. No one ever knows. The silence after a shot feels heavier than the sound itself. Later, when the sky dims again, you crawl out into the stairwell to fetch supplies. It's a narrow climb, half rubble, half shadow. You move like a ghost in someone else's dream. At the landing, you stop. A bullet hole glares from the wall at eye level. You stare at it for a long time. It stares back. Back inside, Oleg has set up a decoy, a helmet balanced on a broom handle. He leans it toward the window. 2 seconds later, crack. A chunk of plaster explodes off the wall. He grins. See? Always faster than us. You don't laugh. Instead, you pick up the harmonica. One note. It echoes like breath inside a tomb. Oleg sighs. You and that sound. It reminds me I'm not made of brick, you say. He nods. Not yet. Outside, dusk blurs into night. The fires flicker again, casting long shadows that crawl across the snow like living things. Somewhere far off, a German voice calls out through a loudspeaker. Soft, calm, almost kind. Russisch Soldaten, surrender. No one will harm you. No one answers. The silence itself is your reply. If you heard a voice in your own language offering safety, would you trust it or stay behind the wall you built from fear? Which do you think lasts longer, courage or suspicion? When darkness deepens, the shooting slows. For a few hours, the city almost breathes. You take your watch at the window again. Snow falls in thin, nervous lines. Each flake feels like a second ticking past, a fragile kind of time, measured not in hours but in chances. You whisper into the night, still here. The word disappears, swallowed by wind and distance. But maybe, just maybe, someone whispers it back from across the street. Interactive close. Imagine yourself there, behind that wall. Rifle cold in your hands, the world narrowed to one window and one heartbeat. Would you fire or wait? Write your answer below, because sometimes patience is the only weapon left. By now, the city has taught you its language. It's not spoken, it's scraped, whispered, carved into walls. Every crack in the pavement, Every creak of a door means something. You learn to listen differently. You have to. The newest order arrives folded in waxed paper, stamped and trembling with importance. Order number 227. Not one step back. You read it twice. It sounds less like a command and more like a threat. Oleg folds his copy into a square and uses it to light a cigarette. "See," he says, smoke curling from his lips. "The only warmth this paper ever gave me." The commissar watches but says nothing. Maybe even he understands. What would you do if retreat meant death? Not from the enemy but from your own side. Could you still call that courage, or is it something colder? You spend your mornings repairing walls that won't stay repaired. Nights are for counting bullets, breaths, missing names. Someone scratches tally marks on the wall beside the door. No one says what they're for. Food comes once every 2 days now. A tin of barley. A crust of bread so small you break it in half just to pretend it lasts longer. Water tastes like rust. You drink it anyway. One morning, the boy with freckles collapses. He hasn't spoken since the snipers shot 2 days before. You and Oleg lift him, lay him near the stove. He opens his eyes for a moment, then murmurs, "I saw birds." You nod, though you both know there are no birds left here. You cover him with your coat. That's all you can do. Have you ever been in a place where kindness itself felt dangerous? Would you have given away your warmth for someone who might not wake again? Outside, the city groans like something alive. Shells fall near the river. The windows flash white, then black again. You start to mark time by light, not by clocks. When the sky brightens, it's morning. When it doesn't, it's still yesterday. Oleg keeps a list. Names of everyone still inside Pavlov's house. Every night he updates it. Sometimes he writes slower, as if writing were the same as keeping someone alive. You ask him once why he bothers. He shrugs. Because someone should remember who we were when we still had faces. That night you stand guard on the roof. Wind cuts through your coat like knives. Below, the river gleams faintly, a black ribbon threading through ruin. You imagine home on the other side. You imagine warmth. Andrei's voice. The smell of bread. Then you shake your head. Imagination is a luxury now. The next morning, a patrol goes missing. The commissar gathers everyone in the stairwell, his voice echoing off stone. Anyone who deserts will be shot. He pauses. Anyone who hesitates will be replaced. No one asks replaced by who. After he leaves, Oleg mutters, "There's no bravery left. Only routine." You almost laugh. Almost. Would you keep fighting out of belief, or just habit? At what point does survival stop feeling like living? Later that evening, you find yourself writing on a scrap of paper. You don't know why. Maybe to prove your hand can still make shapes that mean something. You write, "Still here." Then tear it up, feed it to the fire. The flames rise, orange and brief, like a heartbeat you almost forgot was yours. Interactive close. Imagine standing there, your hands cracked from cold, your heart heavy from repetition. And hearing that order, not one step back. Would you obey, or take one quiet step anyway? Comment what you do, because sometimes defiance is the last form of faith. You wake to hammering. At first you think it's shellfire again. But no, the rhythm is too deliberate, too human. Down in the street, men and women are building. Walls of brick and beams, doors torn from apartments, bed frames twisted into cages of steel. A city remaking itself from its own bones. Someone calls it a barricade. Someone else calls it madness. But no one stops working. You step outside for the first time in days. The air bites. Your boots sink into gray snow, half ash, half memory. The air smells of sweat, oil, and determination. A woman with soot on her face passes you a hammer. "Don't just stare," she says. "Help." You do. The metal is cold enough to tear skin. You swing anyway. Each strike feels like punctuation. A sentence the city is trying to finish. From somewhere nearby, music plays faintly. A gramophone, impossibly still alive. The melody drifts over the ruins. Something soft, almost romantic. Oleg looks up. Can you believe it? Someone kept that thing running. You smile. Maybe music doesn't know it's supposed to die. You keep hammering. The wall grows taller. Shattered bricks become armor. Doors become shields. A boy climbs onto a pile of rubble and ties a banner made from a curtain. It reads, "Step lightly into the future." You stare at it stunned. The slogan from an old advertisement. The same one that once hung outside the tram depot before it burned. Could you find hope in a slogan scorched by war? Would you smile or tear it down to forget what came before? When night falls, the barricade gleams faintly in the firelight. A monument to stubbornness. It's crooked, ugly, perfect. A small group gathers around a barrel fire. Someone passes bread around, soft in the middle, a miracle. Someone else produces a flask. And for a moment, laughter dares to return. You tell stories, not about the fighting, but about the world before it. About fishing trips, about birthdays, about rivers that didn't run red. The woman with the hammer says, "I used to make shoes." Oleg grins. "You still can. We all need souls." She snorts. "And souls." You laugh. All of you do. The sound feels strange, like using a muscle that forgot how to move. Have you ever laughed when you knew you shouldn't, just because silence was worse? Would you have shared that moment even knowing it might be your last? A flare lights up the sky, turning snow to silver. The laughter dies. Everyone freezes. But the flare fades without sound. Just a false alarm this time. You sit by the fire a while longer. Your hands tremble, half from cold, half from remembering that warmth still exists. When you finally return to Pavlov's house, the barricade stands behind you, crooked against the moonlight, defiant against reason. You stop at the door, look back. The woman with the hammer is still there, watching the horizon like it owes her something. You whisper, "Maybe it does." And then you go inside. The harmonica rests in your pocket. You don't play it tonight. You don't need to. The sound of building was music enough. Interactive close. If you were there, standing before a barricade made of doors, tables, and hope, would you have built higher? Or stopped, afraid of what would come to test it? Tell me in the comments. Is survival built from strength or from stubbornness? The hill doesn't look like much from a distance. Just a rise of earth under a sky the color of smoke. But everyone knows its name. They say Memiev Kurgan remembers every step, every breath, every scream that touched its soil. You're ordered there at dawn. Reinforce the line, they say, as if there's a line left to reinforce. You march through snow that isn't white anymore. It's gray, brown, and red where the wind hasn't erased the evidence. The air hums with artillery. Each blast comes not as sound but as pressure, pushing at your ribs, shaking the world. Halfway up the slope, you find helmets buried in the drift. Some Soviet, some German. The wind has leveled them all the same. Oleg climbs beside you, breathing hard. "Every meter costs a life," he mutters. "Maybe two." You nod. The hill feels endless, as if it stretches into the clouds themselves. A tank burns near the crest, its metal shrieking softly as it cools. Beside it lies a hand, still clutching a shovel instead of a rifle. You look away. Would you have kept climbing that hill, knowing the ground beneath you was already full of the fallen? How much courage fits inside one step? The order comes, advance another 30 meters. No cover, just frost, smoke, and faith that the next shell won't find you. You run. Snow explodes at your feet. Bullets whisper through your coat, snapping air into ice. You dive behind a crater. Your pulse feels louder than the gunfire. When you lift your head again, you see the boy with freckles ahead of you. Or maybe it's someone else. Too far to tell, too late to ask. Then a flash. Then nothing. Oleg grabs your collar and drags you forward. You move like reflex, not reason. When you fall again, you realize you've reached the top. There's no glory there, just shattered earth, smoke that stings your eyes, and silence between blasts that feels like the world forgetting how to breathe. You crouch beside a crater, press your face into the frozen dirt. It smells of metal and mud, but beneath that, faintly, grass. Old, dead summer grass. Can you imagine lying on a battlefield and smelling a season that no longer exists? Would you believe it's real, or think the mind makes kindness when it can? The Germans counterattack at dusk. You fire until the rifle kicks like an animal, then reload, then again, until it's not fear guiding you anymore, just rhythm. Pull, aim, exhale, survive. Oleg shouts something, but you can't hear him over the thunder. Your ears ring with a single, endless tone. When the world finally quiets, you see him kneeling beside someone, a young soldier clutching his stomach, blood steaming in the cold. He's whispering for his mother. Oleg stays with him until the whisper stops. Then he looks at you. Keep watching, he says softly. That's the rule. You nod. It's the only one that matters now. Night comes. The hill glows faintly red under the horizon's fire. You and Oleg sit beside each other, breathing frost, sharing silence like rations. Below, the Volga gleams faintly. Not a river anymore, but a mirror of everything that's been lost. You reach into your pocket, pull out the harmonica. This time, Oleg doesn't stop you. You play one low, broken note. It hangs in the air longer than you expect, as if the hill itself is listening. And for that single moment, among ruin, bone, and flame, you believe something holy still lives here. Interactive close. If you were standing on Mamiev Kurgan, with the sky burning and the earth crying beneath your boots, what would you think of first? Home, faith, or nothing at all? Tell me in the comments. Because some hills aren't climbed for victory, only for memory. The morning after the assault, the city feels wrong. Too still. Too clean. Smoke hangs like a ceiling over the ruins, but beneath it there's quiet, the kind that feels borrowed, not earned. You wake to the sound of dripping water. Not gunfire. Not orders. Just water. A pipe cracked during the shelling, and now it sings its small, steady rhythm down the corridor. You sit up, half expecting to hear Oleg's voice. Instead, there's just the stove ticking, and a single fly circling a tin cup. How can the world be both alive and so completely hollow? Outside, snow has melted into gray puddles, revealing the color of the city's wounds. Walls stripped to bone, windows gaping like open mouths. A tram wheel still turning in the wind. Slow, rhythmic, endless. You step outside. Each breath feels foreign, as if the air belongs to someone else. In the distance, the Volga glints beneath the clouds. Thin, pale, patient. You walk without knowing why. Your feet find paths where streets used to be. Every corner looks like somewhere you've already been. Maybe you have. Near the old post office, you find a wall covered in chalk marks. Names. Dozens of them. Some in Russian. Some in German. Some scratched out, replaced, rewritten. Oleg's handwriting among them, careful, square, deliberate. You trace your glove over one word, Andre. Then stop. It's not him. Different Andre. Different son. Different brother. But still, would you have written a name even if you weren't sure the person still lived? Or would you wait, afraid to tempt the silence? A figure appears down the street. A woman in a soldier's coat, scarf trailing behind her. She carries a kettle in one hand, steam curling from its spout. Hot water, she says. They're setting up a kitchen near the grain elevator. Her voice sounds too normal for this place. Too warm. You follow her. Not because you're hungry, but because moving feels better than standing still. At the makeshift kitchen, a line of soldiers wait with tin cups and hollow eyes. The woman pours tea, smiling faintly at each one. Her hands don't shake. Yours do. When she reaches you, she pauses. You were up on the hill, she says. You nod. Her gaze lingers, not pity, not curiosity. Recognition. Like she's seen the same ghosts. You sip the tea. It tastes like smoke and something sweeter. She says, I'm Tamara. You nod again. There's nothing to say. Sometimes names are the only introductions that matter. Have you ever met someone who didn't need words to understand you? Someone who carried the same silence in their eyes? The sky begins to snow again. Thin flakes drifting sideways, as if unsure whether to fall or flee. The world narrows to colorless movement. You watch the flakes melt on the rim of your cup, one by one. Small, quiet disappearances. Later, Tamara lights a cigarette. She exhales slow. You know, she says, the war's not done. But here, it feels like it's already forgotten us. You nod. Maybe forgetting is how it forgives. You both stand there, surrounded by ruins that look almost peaceful under the snow. No one speaks. No one needs to. The fire crackles. The kettle hisses. And for a moment, just a single heartbeat, the world feels almost human again. Interactive close. Picture this. You're standing in a city where the fires have gone out, but the air still tastes of them. Do you breathe deep to remember, or hold your breath to move on? Write your answer below, because healing isn't forgetting, it's surviving the memory. By the third day after the hill, the city begins to whisper again. Not through orders or explosions, but through paper. Sheets, envelopes, fragments, carried by the wind, tangled in wire, fluttering like ghosts that forgot where to land. You find one near the tram depot, folded twice, edges singed. The ink has bled from snow, but you can still read a few words. My dearest. You turn it over. No address, no name, just the impression of a hand that once pressed hard enough to matter. At headquarters, they're collecting them now. Letters recovered from uniforms, pockets, post offices. Thousands. Some opened, some sealed, all undelivered. Tamara's there, sleeves rolled up, sorting stacks that reach her elbows. Most of these will never reach anyone, she says quietly. You nod. But we'll try anyway. She hands you one. It's addressed in German, careful and elegant. The paper smells faintly of lavender. Inside, a woman writes about the weather, about her son learning to whistle, about waiting for her husband's return. She doesn't mention the war once. You stare at the closing line. Come home before the snow. You fold it back carefully, as if the weight of your fingers might break the sentence. If you found a letter like that, one written to someone who'd never read it, would you keep it, send it, or let it rest? What does a promise mean when the world has burned around it? For hours, you and Tamara work in silence. Paper on wood, the soft hiss of the oil lamp. Every so often she hums, a slow, wordless tune that sounds like something from before. You ask, why do you keep them? She looks up, because someone loved someone once, and that's worth recording. That night, you carry a bundle of letters back to Pavlov's house. They rustle inside your coat, a warmth that isn't heat, a heartbeat that isn't yours. Oleg's waiting by the stove, the flames reflected in his tired eyes. You hand him one of the envelopes. He opens it, reads a few lines, then laughs softly. She wrote about her cat, he says, as if the world wasn't ending. He folds it again and tucks it into the wall crack beside his bed. For luck, he says. You realize then, even paper can become shelter. Would you have read those letters, knowing they weren't meant for you? Or would you have guarded them, as if protecting someone else's hope might keep your own alive? Later, you find yourself writing too, on a scrap of ration paper, not to anyone real, not even to Anya, just to the city. You write, you're still here, and so am I. You fold it once, and place it beside the others. The next morning, the stack of letters by the stove has grown higher. No one admits to adding theirs. No one needs to. Outside, the wind carries more paper through the streets, pages fluttering, drifting, finding their way into windows, onto snow, into hands that still remember how to read. Interactive close. Imagine this. You're standing in a broken city, snow falling over thousands of letters that never reached home. Would you pick one up to remember, or let it fly to forget? Write your answer below, because sometimes the words we lose say more than the ones we keep. The Volga isn't frozen solid, not yet, but it's frozen enough to carry weight, and that's the danger. Orders arrive before dawn. Supplies to the eastern bank. Vital. No vehicles. Foot only. You stare at the crate marked radio parts. It's heavy, awkward, and humming faintly with purpose. Oleg tightens the rope around it. Vital, he mutters. They always say that. 6 of you set out, wrapped in whatever layers you can find. Coats over uniforms, scarves stiff with frost, boots tied with wire. The city recedes behind you, its smoke twisting upward like memory itself. The river groans beneath your feet. You hear it before you feel it, that deep, mournful sound of ice shifting, alive and unpredictable. Each step echoes through the surface. You try not to imagine the water below, black patient waiting. Bullets snap in the distance. A German machine gun opens up from the far shore, its rhythm like a metronome of fear. You crouch low. Oleg whispers, keep moving. Don't look back. So you move. Slow. Careful. The crate digs into your shoulders. Your breath burns your throat. Your eyelashes freeze together when you blink. If you had to cross that river, thin ice beneath you, fire ahead, what would you fear more, falling through or stopping halfway? Could you keep walking when even the air feels like it wants you gone? Halfway across, the wind changes. The snow lifts in thin ribbons, white ghosts twisting through the dark. They brush your face soft and cold, like hands made of memory. You glance down through a crack in the ice. Water moves below, slow and dark, reflecting faint streaks of fire from the city. For a heartbeat, it looks almost beautiful. A flare arcs above the far bank, bursting into light that paints everything silver. You freeze. The world goes still. You Oleg the crate, even the wind. Then the light fades. The shooting stops. Only the river breathes again. You take another step, then another. Each one a prayer without words. When you finally reach the far side, a soldier with a clipboard waits by a half-collapsed bunker. He waves you forward. Inside, he says, quickly. You push through the doorway, and the warmth hits like mercy. A stove burns in the corner. The samovar hisses softly, smelling faintly of tea and iron. A woman in uniform takes the crate. You're late, she says, but her voice carries relief, not anger. Tomorrow. You almost don't recognize her under the smoke and sweat. She smiles. Thought the river got you. You shake your head. Almost. She gestures to a table. Sit. There's bread and jam. You blink. Jam? She shrugs. Ration office sent too much. For once. You sit. The bread is rough, the jam too sweet, but it tastes like the world might forgive you for still being alive. The man with the guitar from the grain silo sits in the corner, tuning quietly. He plucks a few strings. The notes drift through the bunker, thin and trembling, but real. Can you imagine that sound? Music in the middle of a frozen war? Would you listen? Or close your eyes, afraid to feel again? Later that night, Tamara tests the radio you brought. A burst of static, then a music, an orchestra. Somewhere far away, Moscow maybe. A waltz, faint but true. Everyone stops. For a moment, there are no sides, no guns, no snow, just melody. You close your eyes and let it find you. The river still moans outside, but for once you don't listen to it. You listen to this. Interactive close. Imagine standing there, frost on your lashes, hands numb, as music from another world drifts through the static. Would you have cried or stayed still, afraid that moving might break the spell? Tell me what you would have done, because sometimes survival sounds like a song. The night after the crossing, the river still groans in your dreams. You wake to the crackle of the stove and Tamara's voice, low and unhurried, humming something to herself. It isn't a song you know. The melody rises, pauses, drifts, like smoke curling from a match about to go out. Each note seems to fill the air without touching it. You sit up. The bunker glows faintly amber, light moving across metal helmets, tin cups, and tired faces. Oleg's asleep near the wall, his breath slow and even for once. Tamara doesn't stop humming. Her eyes are half closed, hands working without thought, tightening a wire, adjusting the radio, coaxing it back to life. She catches you watching. What? She asks. Nothing, you say. Just listening. She smiles faintly. No one listens anymore. You look away, embarrassed by how true that feels. Have you ever met someone who seemed to speak a language older than words? Someone whose silence sounded like music? The radio crackles again. A burst of static. Then a man's voice. Official, distant, brittle as glass. Progress along the Western Front. Heroic defense, unbroken resolve. Tamara lowers the volume. Same song, different words, she says. You nod. The news sounds small compared to her humming. Smaller than her quiet. She pours you tea from the samovar. The metal is dented, the spout leaking a little. You don't care. The tea is warm enough to sting your tongue. Proof that you're still here. Why that song, you ask? Tamara shrugs. My mother used to sing it. Before the first war, before all this. Said it was about rivers that never froze. You both laugh softly. Wish we had one of those, you say. She looks at you, then really looks. Maybe we do, she says. Maybe it just forgot us for a while. You think about that. About rivers and memory. About forgetting not as loss but as rest. If you could forget something, just one thing, would you choose the pain? Or the reason it mattered in the first place? Later, Oleg wakes and joins you both. He jokes about the tea being more bulletproof than he is. For a few minutes, laughter warms the air more than the stove ever could. Then Tamara picks up the guitar from the corner, the one the man left behind after the surrender. She strums gently. Her fingers are rough but sure. The sound is uneven, broken, and beautiful for it. She starts singing, quiet enough that you almost have to lean forward to hear. It isn't about war. It isn't even about peace. It's about a bridge in summer, about someone waiting at the water's edge, about coming home. You close your eyes. The harmonica in your pocket feels heavy, like it's listening to. When she finishes, no one claps. No one dares to. Silence feels like respect. Tamara smiles, sets the guitar down. Your turn, she says. You shake your head. I can't sing. Then play, she says. So you do. One breath. One note. The same melody you've carried since the ruins. The one that never quite played right. But this time, when the note wavers, Tamara hums along. And suddenly, the melody finds itself. For the first time in months, you don't feel like a survivor. You feel like someone living. Can you imagine that? Sharing a song with a stranger in the dark, and realizing you're both remembering the same world? Would you have joined in? Or just listened, afraid to disturb the fragile beauty of it? When the last note fades, Tamara leans back against the wall and closes her eyes. Oleg murmurs something about miracles. You don't answer. You're afraid that speaking might end it. Outside, the wind howls again. But this time, it sounds almost like applause. Interactive close. Imagine you were there, sitting by that fire, the harmonica trembling in your hands, the song still echoing between ruined walls. Would you have sung or stayed silent? Leave your answer below. Because even in war, music remembers what peace sounds like. You haven't slept properly in days, not since the night of the song. Every time your eyes close, you hear the river again, groaning under invisible weight. Outside, snow falls in slow spirals, like ash pretending to be pure. Tamara's gone north with a convoy. Oleg's team was reassigned to the warehouses. You stayed. Someone has to watch the streets. The command calls it patrol duty. You call it walking with ghosts. You start at dusk. The air smells like iron and smoke. Each step echoes against the stone, carrying farther than sound should travel. The city looks softer now, not because it healed, but because winter hides its scars under white. Broken balconies look like smiles. Collapsed walls resemble resting giants. Your breath clouds the air. The rifle strap creaks. That's the only heartbeat left. At the corner near the library, you hear something. A faint shuffle, a cough. Not close, not far. You raise the rifle, finger trembling just slightly. Nothing. Only wind moving through empty windows. You keep walking. A few blocks down, you pass the mural, the girl with the ribbon. She's fading. Cracks run across her face like veins. Someone's drawn a second flower at her feet. Chalk red as blood. You stop. Touch the wall with your glove. The chalk smears. Still fresh. If you were there, would you believe that someone drew it after the shelling stopped? Or would you think ghosts still borrow human hands? You turn the corner and freeze. A shape moves in the alley, slow, limping. Too big for a child. Too quiet for a soldier. You whisper, stop. No answer. The shape keeps moving. You step closer. Rifle raised. The shadow turns. A face, pale and thin, eyes wide with something between fear and apology. A German uniform, but no weapon. He raises his hands, fingers shaking in the cold. He looks 16, maybe 17. You can see his breath, and the terror in it. You don't shoot. You can't. The boy whispers something in German. You don't catch the words, but you recognize the tone. Lost, begging, human. Would you have pulled the trigger, or lowered the rifle? Could you still see the difference between an enemy and a boy? You gesture for him to go. He stares for a moment, then nods once and disappears down the alley, swallowed by snow. You stand there, hands numb, heart louder than the wind. When you return to the bunker, Oleg's waiting by the stove. He looks at you. You saw something? You nod. He doesn't ask what. He just says, there are more ghosts than soldiers left now. You sit beside him, hands still trembling. Outside, the snow falls thicker, covering footprints, hiding choices. You whisper, do you think the dead watch us? Oleg takes a long breath. No, he says finally. I think they wait for us to watch them. You both sit in silence, listening to the wind knock softly on the door, like someone asking to come in. Would you have opened it? Would you have looked, just to see who was still out there, even if it wasn't the living anymore? The fire cracks once. The sound startles you, then fades. You exhale. Somewhere outside, the boy you spared keeps walking, maybe toward his own line, maybe nowhere at all, but you'll never know. And maybe that's mercy. Interactive close. Imagine this night, the city empty, the snow glowing, your rifle heavy in your hands. A figure appears out of the dark, unarmed, afraid. Do you fire or let him walk away? Comment below, because sometimes the hardest part of war isn't killing, it's deciding who deserves to live. It doesn't happen with a trumpet. There's no flag unfurled from a tower, no officer in a clean coat giving speeches about glory. It begins with one man, stumbling out of the ruins near the grain elevator, hands raised above his head. In one hand he carries a white cloth, tied to a stick that used to be a rifle. You watch from your post across the avenue. At first you think it's a trick, trap, a lure to draw you out. But the man doesn't shout, doesn't run. He just walks, step after careful step. Like each movement is a confession. You lower your rifle. So does Oleg. A second man appears behind him. Then a third. Then a dozen. They come in small, uneven lines. Some limping. Some carrying others. No formation. No pride. Only exhaustion. Someone beside you whispers, "It's happening." You don't answer. You're afraid that speaking might break it. If you were there, watching an army crumble before your eyes, would you feel relief or something quieter, like pity? Could you tell the difference between victory and mercy? Your orders are simple. Observe, don't engage. Let headquarters handle the surrender. Let officers talk. Let history decide what to call this. So you stand and watch. A German Feldwebel approaches the line first. Not swaggering, not proud. Just there. Thin as hunger. Cheeks hollow. Boots wrapped in cloth. He stops a few paces away. Looks at you. Then removes his pistol. Places it gently in the snow. Oleg steps forward. Nods once. No words. None needed. That's how the war ends here. Not with gunfire, but with silence. More soldiers emerge from cellars and trenches. Hundreds, then thousands. Some in full uniform. Some wrapped in rags and blankets. Some dragging makeshift sledges. Carrying the wounded, the frozen, the forgotten. You help set up a processing station near the warehouse. Your job is simple. Collect weapons, tag prisoners, direct them toward the trucks bound east. You hold a clipboard. Your hands shake so badly. You can barely write. A young prisoner, barely older than the one you saw in the alley, hands you a photograph. A woman and a baby. He says something in German. You don't understand, but you nod anyway. He smiles, faintly, then moves on. You slip the photo into your coat pocket. You don't know why. Would you have taken it too? Would you have kept it, knowing it was all that man had left? Or would you have given it back, afraid it wasn't yours to remember? By evening, the snow is full of footprints, not from pursuit or retreat, but from surrender. The city exhales for the first time in months. Not a cheer, not even a sigh, just breath. That night you sit by the window. Outside, the street that once roared with battle is quiet now, a corridor of smoke and ghosts. Oleg joins you, hands raw from the cold. He passes a flask. You drink. It burns. He says, "It's over." You nod, but it doesn't feel like over. It feels like empty. You ask, "How many did we lose?" Oleg doesn't answer, just stares at the snow, where light from the fires dances faintly across the ground. Finally, he says, "Enough to remember. Too many to count." You sit together in silence. No words. No need. The fire crackles softly, and outside, the city begins to dream again. A broken dream, but still a dream. Interactive close. Picture it, the final surrender. Not a victory parade. Not joy, just a silence so heavy it almost hurts. Would you have cried? Would you have smiled? Or just watched? Unable to tell if what you felt was peace or grief. Comment what the end would mean to you, because sometimes survival has no sound at all. There's no ceremony when they hand you the medal. No applause, no music. Just a man in a wool cap with a clipboard, reading your name wrong and not bothering to correct himself. He pins the medal crookedly to your chest. Bravery, he says, or something close enough. You nod, say nothing. Later you take it off, not because you don't want it, but because the weight feels wrong. They tell you your new assignment will be clerical. You don't fire rifles anymore. You write names. The lists begin on a single sheet of paper, then 10, then 100. then more. Each day you walk through the city, clipboard in hand, boots crunching over frost and ash, marking what remains. Buildings, uniforms, people, ghosts. You enter houses with no doors, rooms where snow drifts through broken ceilings. You count everything. Rifles stacked like firewood, helmets lined on windowsills, photographs nailed to walls. Sometimes you find names scratched into bricks. You copy them down, even when they're half erased, even when they might be just initials. Would you have written them all? Even the ones you couldn't read? Would you have guessed? Just to make sure no one disappeared twice? Oleg still helps you when he can. He's thinner now, eyes deeper, but his handwriting is steady. Every evening you sit by the stove, comparing notes, counting absence. He jokes, "At this rate, the paper will run out before the dead do." You don't laugh. At night, you dream of letters instead of gunfire, pages fluttering through the air, like the ones Tamara used to sort. You wake with ink on your fingers, and the taste of metal on your tongue. The city grows quieter each day. Fewer patrols, fewer voices. Even the crows seem to have left. You find yourself talking to the buildings. A strange habit, but you tell them who they used to be. This was a bakery. You were a school. You Pavlov's house. You speak softly, like naming them might help them stand a little straighter. Would you have done that too? Given names back to walls and windows, just to make sure something still answered when you spoke? One afternoon, you walk through what used to be the Red October factory. Half the roof is gone. Sunlight slants through the smoke-stained beams, catching the frost in midair. You sit on a fallen girder, pull out your notebook, and write your own name on the last page. Just your first name. Just enough. You don't know why you do it. Maybe to remind yourself that you existed here too. Not as a number, not as a uniform, but as a witness. Later that night, Oleg finds you still writing. He hands you a small tin. Inside, sunflower seeds. "For the train," he says. You smile. You haven't thought about trains in months. You close the notebook. Ink still wet. Tomorrow you'll keep counting. Tomorrow the city will still need its names. Interactive close. Imagine being told your new duty isn't to fight, but to remember. Would you do it? Would you carry the weight of every name you wrote, even the ones you didn't know? Tell me below, because sometimes the hardest battles begin after the war ends. Spring doesn't arrive all at once. It comes quietly. A drip from a broken pipe, a patch of thawed earth by the wall, a smell that isn't smoke anymore. You wake one morning to footsteps outside the post. Not boots, just when you open the door, you see them. Women in heavy coats, children wrapped in blankets, men with hollow eyes and sacks over their shoulders. The first to return. They move like people stepping into a memory that doesn't fit anymore. Each turn of the street holds both recognition and loss. One woman stops, presses her hand to the wall, whispers a name. The bricks don't answer, but she smiles anyway. You walk with them for a while, past the square where the tram once burned. A little girl points at it and asks, "Was this a playground?" Her mother nods. Once. How would you answer a child who only knows the ruins? Would you tell her what it used to be, or let her imagine something better? The visitors fan out across the streets. Some sweep doorways, some clear debris, some just stand in silence, staring at where windows used to be. One man approaches you, eyes red, holding a rusted key. "This was my shop," he says. You look at the rubble behind him. He nods, as if the ruins have answered him anyway. At midday, you help a group set up a soup line. There's little to cook with. Potatoes gone soft, onions that smell of smoke. But when the pot begins to boil, the scent draws people from blocks away. Oleg appears with a grin. Smells like victory. You shake your head. Smells like life. You hand out bowls until your hands ache. Each person takes theirs carefully, as if afraid it might vanish. Tamara returns that evening, truck covered in mud, hair dusted with flour. She waves when she sees you. "I brought bread," she says. "Real bread." You almost laugh, almost cry. The people gather again, passing pieces to each other, so no one goes without. Someone starts humming, then another joins in, then someone claps, off rhythm, off key, but no one cares. Can you imagine it? Music, laughter, and bread in a city that had forgotten both? Would you have joined in, or just watched, afraid to believe it was real? As the sun sets, you walk to the river. The ice is gone. The water flows dark and steady, like something remembering how to breathe. Across the current, smoke rises from new chimneys. Someone's rebuilding there too. You think of all the names in your notebook. You think of the ones not written. You whisper to the river, "They're coming home." The wind carries the words away. Maybe to the other shore. Maybe to nowhere. It doesn't matter. For the first time in a long while, the city doesn't sound like grief. It sounds like movement. And that's enough. Interactive close. Imagine being one of those first visitors, walking through streets that remember everything you've lost. Would you rebuild in the same place, or leave it behind for good? Tell me below, because sometimes returning is harder than surviving. They give you a new assignment. Inventory Cultural Department. You laugh when you read it. A department in a city with no roofs. Still you go. The building they chose for it used to be a school. The chalkboards are cracked. The floors warped by water. But the sign outside still reads, "Library." Inside, the air smells of dust and smoke and something faintly sweet, like paper that survived a fire by remembering how to hide. Tables are set up under a patchwork of tarps. Boxes everywhere. Labels written on scraps of old propaganda posters. Letters, medals, toys, books. Tamara is there, of course. She grins when she sees you. Couldn't stay away, could you? You shrug. Someone has to count the ghosts. She hands you gloves and a ledger. Then start here. The first box you open holds photographs. Families, lovers, a picnic by the river before the war. Children in uniforms too big for them. A wedding. The bride's smile dusted in silver nitrate and time. You study each image. Write down whatever survives. Clothing, expressions, fragments of handwriting. When you finish, you sit for a long time with your hand on the last photo. A man and woman dancing in a kitchen. The light in the picture looks warm. You can almost feel it. If you found that photo, would you keep it for history or for yourself? Would you catalog memory or try to live inside it again? The next box is filled with books. Most are burnt at the edges, but a few still open. You read one line, then another. To live through winter, one must learn to listen to silence. You copy it into your ledger. It feels like a truth the city already knows. Oleg arrives later with a sack of medals and dog tags. He empties them onto the table. The metal clatters. A chorus of small ghosts. You and Tamara begin sorting. Soviet, German, civilian. Each one gets its place. Each one a number. Do you ever think about what happens to these after? You ask. Tamara shrugs. Maybe someone will build a museum. Maybe no one will care. You nod. Then we'll care now. The work becomes ritual. Afternoons spent tracing handwriting. Evenings spent boiling tea from melted snow. Sometimes the wind blows through the missing windows, lifting loose pages like birds trying to escape. One day a soldier enters. Barely 20, uniform too new. He carries a bundle wrapped in cloth. "I found this near the river," he says. Inside, a harmonica. Yours. You stare at it, run your thumb over the dented brass. It still smells faintly of smoke in winter. Tamara watches you. "You'll play it again?" "Not yet," you say. "Not until the city learns the tune." Can you imagine standing there, surrounded by the relics of everything that once breathed, and realizing you're one of them? Would you feel grateful or guilty to still be alive? By evening, the lamps are lit. The archive hums softly, the sound of pens scratching, paper shifting, history exhaling. You look around, at Tamara, at Oleg, at the young soldier now asleep over a pile of books, and think, this is how civilization starts again. Not with speeches, but with lists. Not with orders, but with care. Interactive close. Imagine walking through that archive. Shelves made from ruins, papers breathing dust and memory. Would you read every name, or close the box and walk away? Tell me below, because remembering is its own kind of rebuilding. You hear the hammers before you see them. At first you think it's shelling again, but the rhythm is different, steadier, human. They're building a bridge. The old Volga crossing is gone, swallowed by winter and war. Now men stand knee-deep in mud and thawed ice, hauling beams of wood, ropes creaking under the weight of beginnings. Someone says, they'll name it after the engineers. Someone else replies, they should name it after the stubborn ones. You walk down to the riverbank with Tamara and Oleg. The water moves black and slow, carrying bits of frozen bark and ash downstream. On the far shore, children wave branches like flags. Their laughter sounds impossible and completely real. Tamara shields her eyes from the glare. Look at that, she says. Actual wood, actual nails. You smile. It's strange, isn't it? We spent years learning how to destroy. Now we have to remember how to build. Oleg nods. Harder job, this one. What do you think would be harder? Building something new, or trusting that it won't fall again? Could you look at a river that once devoured you, and believe in crossing it once more? A foreman waves you closer. They need help aligning planks. You roll up your sleeves. The air smells of pine sap and sweat. 2 cents the city almost forgot. You lift brace hammer. The sound echoes off the water, beating like a new kind of heartbeat. The sun climbs higher. A thaw begins. Your boots sink in the mud, but you don't care. Tamara laughs for no reason. Oleg joins her. You don't even remember what was funny. It doesn't matter. The laughter itself feels like proof of something. At noon, someone brings stew from the field kitchen. Thin, salty, full of hope. You eat sitting on a beam, watching the bridge stretch farther toward the opposite bank. A boy walks past carrying a plank twice his size. He grins. My father says the river won't win this time. You grin back. Tell him to keep saying that. Can you imagine it? Rebuilding a world one nail at a time, while the ghosts of the past watch from the water. Would you keep working, even if the sound of hammers made you remember gunfire? By evening, the first span reaches across the current. People gather to watch, their faces streaked with soot and light. Someone starts humming. Someone else joins in. A worker raises his hat to the sky. It's not celebration. It's recognition. The moment when ruin finally stops echoing. Tamara whispers, tomorrow they'll try to drive a truck across. You smile. Let's hope it knows how to pray. You stay until dusk. The river glows gold in the dying light. And for the first time in months, you don't think of the war. You think of tomorrow. Interactive close. Imagine standing on that half-built bridge. The air thick with wood smoke and possibility. Would you step onto it first? Or wait, afraid it might collapse? Tell me below. Because sometimes faith looks exactly like a plank over deep water. The bridge holds. That's how it begins, not with cheers, not with parades. Just the quiet sound of tires rolling across wood. And no one falling through. After that, orders come down. Reassignment. Western route. Civil logistics. In other words, go home. You pack slowly. The notebook of names. The harmonica. The photograph of the German family you never returned. The tin of sunflower seeds Oleg gave you. Tamara hugs you before dawn. You'll come back, she says. You try to smile. Maybe when the city stops needing me. She laughs. It never will. The truck ride west feels endless. Fields half frozen. Villages asleep under frost. Chimneys puffing gray into the pale sky. You forgot the world had colors. At every stop, someone waves. A farmer, a child, a woman hanging laundry. They wave because someone's coming home, even if it isn't who they hoped for. When the truck finally stops, you don't recognize the place. The streets are narrower, the roof shorter, the silence deeper. Home. You walk through what's left of it. The well still stands, the fence leans, the apple tree is just a stump. You touch it anyway. The bark feels like memory. The door creaks open on the first try. Inside, dust. A chair tipped over, a cracked teacup on the floor. Everything smaller than you remember. You set your pack down, sit, and listen. 4 footsteps, 4 voices. For the world that used to answer you. Only wind. You find an old radio in the corner, rusted, silent. You take it apart, clean the wires, patch the cord with string. It hums once, then falls quiet again. If you return to the place where your story began, and found only silence, would you rebuild it, or let it rest? Could you live in a memory, and call it home again? Night comes early. You light a candle. Shadows crawl over the walls like old friends. You eat a crust of bread, drink from a dented canteen, and try to remember what comfort used to feel like. Outside, a train horn sounds somewhere far away. It's almost music. You take out the harmonica. The metal is cold, but it remembers your hands. You play the river song. Slow, unsteady, but the notes still find their way out. You play for the empty room, for the cracked cup, for the ghost that stayed behind. And when you finish, you whisper to no one in particular, "I'm back." Interactive close. Imagine walking into your old home. Dust on the table, silence in the air, and only echoes to greet you. Would you stay and rebuild, or close the door and keep walking? Tell me below, because sometimes coming home is the hardest journey of all. You find the paper by accident, a sheet torn from an old ledger, edges yellowed, corners soft. You smooth it flat on the table, light the candle, and stare at it for a long time. You haven't written her name in years. You trace the first letter slowly, as if it might shatter. Anya. The ink stutters where your hand trembles. You stop, then begin again. "Dear Anya, I'm home." You stare at the words. They look too small for everything that came before them. You keep writing. The city still stands. Not proudly, just stubbornly. The Volga runs black again. Tamara says that means the fish are returning. I haven't seen any yet, but I believe her. You pause. Listen to the candle's faint hiss. Outside, wind moves through the chimney, whispering like someone breathing your name. I wish you could see it. Not how it was, how it is now. The bridge is new. The streets quieter. People sweep the ruins before they rebuild them, like they're afraid to erase the memories too quickly. You hesitate, then add, "There are still ghosts though. I talk to them sometimes. They don't answer, but maybe that's the answer." You look at what you've written. Feels too honest, too heavy for the page. Still you keep going. "I met someone named Tamara. She fixes radios. She hums when she works. Sometimes I think she keeps the city alive by accident." You stop again, afraid of what that line might mean, then finish the thought anyway. "She reminded me what sound feels like." The ink runs low. You dip the pen again. The candle flickers. "Do you remember the song you used to sing? About the river that never froze? I think it found me again. Or maybe I finally learned how to listen." You close your eyes. The harmonica sits on the table beside you, silent, waiting. If you had the chance to write one letter to the past, to someone who no longer answers, what would you say first? Would you write to remember, or to finally let go? You write the last line slowly, carefully. "I don't know if this will ever reach you. I don't even know if you'd recognize me now. But if the wind carries this far enough, know this, we stood where no one thought we could, and I'm still here." You sign only your first name. Fold the paper once, twice. Hold it over the candle flame just long enough to see the edges darken, but not burn. You carry it outside. The night is calm, the sky pale with stars. You lay the letter on the riverbank, where the water laps softly at the shore. It drifts away, slow, patient, sure, carrying your words into the current, toward everything that was left unsaid. You watch until it vanishes, then whisper, "Good night." Interactive close. Imagine writing your own letter to someone you've lost. One that will never be answered, one you'll never reread. Would you burn it, send it away, or keep it folded close to your heart? Tell me below, because sometimes letting go is just another way of remembering. They call it a parade, but it's not the kind you remember. No brass bands, no flags bright as fire, no generals in polished boots, just people, walking. The city has decided to breathe together again. The frost is gone, the river runs clear, and someone hung ribbons between the lampposts, blue, white, and red, fluttering like heartbeat against sunlight. You stand by the library steps. Children run past with paper flowers, their laughter spilling through the street like water. An old man beats a drum with a spoon. No rhythm, no order, but everyone follows it anyway. Oleg limps toward you, dressed in a coat 2 sizes too big. He grins. Would you look at that? A city pretending it remembers how to smile. You smile back. Pretending's the first step. Tamara joins you with a crate of bread. Field Bakery sent too much again, she says. You laugh. Then history's repeating itself. She starts handing out loaves to anyone passing by. Soldiers, widows, children who've never seen spring before. Every piece breaks differently, but each one is shared. The air smells of flour and new rain. You watch the crowd grow thicker. Faces you know, faces you don't, faces you thought you'd never see again. Can you imagine that moment? Seeing a whole city stand up from its knees? Would you cry? Or would you laugh? Afraid that too much joy might wake the ghosts again? At noon, someone begins to sing. A woman's voice, thin, cracking, but steady. The tune is the same river song. Others join her, one by one, until the melody weaves through the street like light through mist. You take the harmonica from your pocket. Tamara nods. Play it, she whispers. So you do. The notes rise softly above the crowd. Children turn. Men remove their caps. Women close their eyes. Even the pigeons circle lower, as if listening. The sound isn't perfect. Some notes wobble, others fade, but together, it becomes something whole. The parade moves again, slowly, past the ruins of Pavlov's house, past the grain silo, past the chalk wall where flowers once bloomed in dust. Someone has painted over them now, bright and careful, not to hide, but to keep. You lower the harmonica. For the first time, you don't feel like you're playing for the dead. You're playing for the living. Tamara squeezes your hand. Oleg laughs, a sound that cracks the air open like sunlight. If you were there, walking in that first parade of peace, would you march at the front, or quietly at the edge, watching everyone else rediscover the weight of being alive? As the day fades, the crowd drifts apart, leaving only footprints in wet earth, and the scent of bread. You sit on the library steps with Oleg and Tamara, watching the sky turn gold, then gray, then the deep violet of forgiveness. No speeches, no flags, just the sound of people going home. Interactive close. Imagine standing in that street, the war behind you, music in the air, and bread warm in your hands. Would you have believed it? Or would you still wait for the sound of sirens? Tell me below, because sometimes peace feels like the strangest miracle of all. You return to the library a year later, only now it has a new name. A wooden sign hangs above the door, carved by hand. Museum of the Siege. You pause before entering. The same steps, the same doorway, but inside, everything is changed. The walls are painted white. The smell of smoke is gone. Children's drawings hang where bullet holes once were. A woman in a gray uniform greets you with a clipboard. Welcome, she says. Have you been here before? You almost laugh. Yes, you say softly, but it looked different then. She smiles without understanding. Please, take your time. You step inside. Rows of glass cases line the room. Inside them, letters, medals, spoons, maps, toys, photographs. Each tagged, each clean, each silent. There's your handwriting on some of the labels. The catalog numbers you wrote months ago, back when the ink froze in your pen. You move slowly, reading each card, each date. Some objects you remember holding, others you'd forgotten until this moment. A harmonica, not yours, but close enough. Its brass glints beneath the lights like sunlight on river ice. If you walked into a museum of your own life, would you recognize the things that mattered most? Or would they look too small, too ordinary, to believe they carried your story? Children wander past, eyes wide, voices whispering. A little girl stops before a display of chalk drawings. She tilts her head. Who made these? She asks her teacher. The teacher says, no one knows. They were found on a wall near the river. You look closer. They're faint but still visible. 3 flowers. White, yellow, red. You remember every one. The girl presses her hand against the glass. They're pretty, she says. You nod. They were. Tamara appears beside you. Older now, hair shorter, uniform cleaner. You came back, she says. I heard you were in Smolensk. I was, you reply. Didn't stay. She smiles. None of us ever really do. You walk together through the exhibits. She shows you the new section. The letters recovered from the depot. Behind glass, a page you recognize. Your letter to Anya. Unfolded. Frame. Displayed beneath the sign. Author unknown. You don't say anything for a long time. Then you whisper. Maybe that's how it should be. Tamara glances at you. Does it hurt to see it? You think. Then shake your head. No, it just feels lighter. Could you stand before your own past, labeled and numbered, and feel peace instead of pain? Would you reach out to touch it, or keep your hands by your sides, afraid to break the glass? You leave the museum as dusk settles. The air outside tastes of rain and iron. Across the square, a group of students sketch the ruins for art class. They laugh, pointing at the clouds turning pink behind the cranes. You stop, look back at the museum one last time. The windows glow like lanterns, each one holding a fragment of what used to be. And you think, maybe that's enough. Maybe remembrance doesn't need to be loud. Maybe surviving is just another word for remembering quietly. Interactive close. Imagine visiting a museum of your own memories, some bright, some broken, all preserved behind glass. Would you change the captions, or let the silence speak for you? Tell me below, because in the end, every survivor becomes a curator of their own past. Evening falls soft over the Volga. The river glows bronze under a thin veil of mist, and for the first time in years, the wind carries no smoke, no gunpowder, only the scent of wet earth and pine. You walk the embankment slowly, each step echoing against the stone. Behind you, the museum's lights fade, and the sound of the city grows distant, a gentle hum instead of a wound. The bridge stands solid now. Trucks cross it, children run across it, even dogs chase shadows there. Every nail, every plank, every footprint, a proof of return. You stop where the ice once cracked beneath your boots, the spot where the boy fell asleep, the place where you carried him from the snow. You kneel. The river sighs. For a long time you say nothing. Then quietly, you begin to play. The harmonica's notes drift into the dusk, thin, trembling, but full. The song is older now, slower, but it still remembers how to find the current. Across the water, the city lights blink awake. Reflections ripple. The melody carries between them, like a bridge of air. You think of Petrov's flask, Tamara's laughter, Oleg's sunflower seeds, Anya's letter that never found its way home. You think of the boy who said Danke, and wonder if he grew tall somewhere, far from the snow. If you stood on that riverbank, at the edge of everything you've survived, would you feel sorrow or gratitude? Would you still look for ghosts, or finally let them rest? The harmonica falls silent. You tuck it into your coat, feeling its weight against your heart. The sky darkens to indigo. Stars flicker, their light soft as breath. You whisper, to those who stayed, to those who didn't. The words vanish into the air, but the echo remains. You close your eyes, and in the hush that follows, you hear them again. Footsteps on frozen streets, laughter through broken walls, a city rebuilding itself one name at a time. And then you breathe, deeply, freely. What would you do now? Walk away and start again? Or stay, to guard what was rebuilt from dust? Would you trust that peace can last? Even here, where silence once screamed, you watch the last light slide across the water. The river moves on, steady, eternal, as if it has already forgiven everything. You take one final step closer to the edge, and in the reflection, you see not a soldier, not a survivor, but simply a person, alive. The wind passes over you, gentle as a hand. It carries the faintest hum, a song you once played for the dead, now sung by the living. You smile, then turn, and walk back toward the lights, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as someone who was there, and still is. Interactive close. Imagine standing by that river, dusk fading, music gone, and peace finally quiet in your chest. Would you stay to watch the stars, or keep walking toward the city lights? Tell me below, because every ending is only another crossing, and you've made it to the other side.